he making a mistake by trying to point a caucus so sharply to the left?
Well, that's a question you have to direct to him. There are 215 members of the House Democratic Caucus. A handful of primaries that go in one direction or the other in a given state or two aren't going to reshape who we are as House Democrats.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, just suffered a massive and total humiliating defeat because a whole bunch of candidates, Democrats that he endorsed, that he was supporting for re-election, just lost their primaries to socialist Democrats, socialist communist Democrats that were being backed by Zohran Mamdani. And this is the clearest sign yet that Hakeem Jeffries and traditional Democrats, they're losing power. And the Democratic Party is being taken over by a whole bunch of radical left-wing Democrats. Let us get into it by starting with this video where even CNN is now acknowledging how much trouble the Democrats they're in. Play clip.
Well, New York City matters because the two most exciting left-wing candidates are here, AOC and Mamdani, but also this is the stronghold for the establishment, Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. This is a battle between the establishment and this insurgency, and the roof is collapsing on the Democratic Party establishment tonight. If Mamdani gets a hat trick, 3 out of 3, this is a new era for the Democratic Party, and you can't write off New York City because this is the place where both it's the power center for the establishment and the insurgency, and they're going head-to-head tonight. And right now, this is no longer a movement. This is a movement and a machine at the same time. There's just no way to sugarcoat this. If Mamdani pulls off a hat trick, it is a new era in Democratic Party politics.
That was Van Jones, a pretty left-wing Democrat, going on CNN explaining how much trouble Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, they're in. The establishment Democrats, they're in a lot of trouble because Zohran Mamdani and the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, that organization, what they're doing, they're going around and recruiting a whole bunch of socialists and getting them elected into office. And that spells trouble for the Democrat and the Democratic Party. And just to show you how bad it's getting for Hakeem Jeffries, at one of these events where Hakeem Jeffries, his picture came on the screen where he was doing an interview, and these Democrats, these socialists, started booing Hakeem Jeffries. And this is to show you that Hakeem Jeffries is losing power across the board, and the Democratic Party is changing in real time. It's only going to become more radical. Let us watch this video. Play clip. That was Hakeem Jeffries getting booed, virtually getting booed, because his interview came up on the screen, and immediately these supporters, these Mamdani socialist communist supporters, just started booing Hakeem Jeffries. And this is to show you that Hakeem Jeffries, he's losing power. And the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party, is changing in real time. And I don't think there's anything that Hakeem Jeffries can do about it, because all the candidates that Hakeem Jeffries endorsed, they lost. And the candidates that Zohran Mamdani endorsed, all of them won. And here we have Hakeem Jeffries trying to downplay exactly what happened in New York.
I want to ask about the New York races, since you mentioned that. Are you worried at all about the influence of the Democratic Socialists in primaries there and across the country?
Well, there are 4 races in New York City, and I'm standing behind every single one of those races that involve an incumbent, of course, and that's Adriano Espaillat, Dan Goldman, Yvette Clarke, and Grace Meng.
That was Hakeem Jeffries making it clear that he's standing by all incumbent Democrats that are running for re-election in New York City. And the 2 candidates that Hakeem Jeffries stood by, they lost their primaries to Zohran Mamdani's socialist candidates. And Zohran Mamdani had 3 socialist candidates that won primaries last night. And over 7 incumbents in New York as a whole lost their primaries. And here we have that article that explains that Hakeem Jeffries is essentially trying to downplay the clash with Zohran Mamdani over the New York primaries. And the article explains that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is minimizing the significance of New York's congressional primaries, telling reporters that the ideological direction of his party won't rest on a few House seats. Why it matters. It is all part of a careful balancing act in which Jeffries is trying to stop a Democratic socialist takeover while avoiding open conflict with New York City's mayor, Zohran Mamdani. So this is a clear sign that Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of the establishment, they're trying to downplay exactly what's going on in the Democrat Party, because the Democratic Party is basically lost at this point, and CNN is now recognizing and acknowledging that. And here we have a panelist on CNN debating and calling out what's going on in the Democratic Party, that Hakeem Jeffries is a clear loser in this situation. Play clip.
And the brand leftward. I mean, the Democratic Party now is the Democratic Socialist Party of America. They're for anti-Semitism. They're for confiscation. They're against capitalism.
Come on, we're
this
for
is what's happening.
anti-Semitism.
This
That's
is what's
obscene.
happening.
That's
This
an
is what's
obscene
happening.
statement.
And you know, you also can look tonight and see somebody else is a big loser. That's Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is going to lose these races in New York where Zohran Mamdani
He didn't
is
endorse
endorsed.
in these races.
He did endorse. He endorsed Goldman. He endorsed his incumbent members of Congress. If he can't get the Hispanic caucus chairman across the line in a city where he's the leading figure of the political machine, then his stick is very short in the U.S. Capitol. And that's because Hakeem Jeffries himself, as liberal as he is not far left enough for today's Democratic primary.
That was a panelist on CNN. I believe he's a right-wing panelist calling out exactly what's going on in the Democrat Party. And these liberals on the panel, they couldn't come up with a rebuttal to actually argue in favor of Hakeem Jeffries or the Democratic Party, because as I mentioned before, the Democratic Party is only going to become more and more radical as we move forward with all these socialist candidates that are being elected. And here we have a video of Scott Jennings, because one of the things that the panelists just mentioned is that the Democratic Party is becoming an anti-Semitic party, because one of the candidates that were running against the socialist candidates went to a coffee shop in New York City, and then he got kicked out because he essentially supports, Israel, I guess. I'm not sure exactly the details on that, but here's Scott Jennings.
Sort of glossed over the main issue in this race, which is Israel. I mean, Dan Goldman is a congressman, and he's Jewish, and he went into a coffee shop this weekend in Brooklyn, and they said, "You're not welcome here anymore." Brad Lander is out speaking in mosques, telling those people that he'd like to go align himself with Ilhan Omar and the rest of the squad. Dan Goldman's only sin, I guess, is that he thinks Israel has a right to exist. And for that, that has been the principal issue in this. And you've got the mayor of New York City, Mamdani, out saying about AIPAC and Jewish Americans who have participated in our politics that they are, quote, monsters. What is happening right now in New York City, the Democrat socialist takeover of the Democratic Party, should frighten not just Jewish Americans, but all Americans everywhere, because this is the direction the Democrats are headed nationally. Look what's happening in Michigan, and it is frightening. Throwing Democrat Jewish congressmen out of coffee shops in Brooklyn, New York, it's not 1930s Germany. This is the United States of America.
It is insane what's going on in this country, much less what's going on in New York City, because I would just never imagine that things like these like this is happening in our country. But just to highlight what these candidates are about, this is one of the candidates that Zohran Mamdani endorsed, and I believe she won last night. And this is her philosophy. This is her views in terms of how she views America. Play clip.
And so, and finding that, the system of capitalism and racism and white supremacy, etc., and Islamophobia have all been used, to colonize lands, right, to take resources from other people. And so this is like a long trajectory, and we're just seeing the manifestations of that continuation, right, with 9/11. And so a lot of times when people are asking us to respond about, attack, right, if you look back, historically, right, a lot of us come from lands that were colonized, lands where wars are being waged, right? A lot of times because of U.S. policy or the policies in Europe. And so I find that we can connect over that, but then also that the idea that we have to apologize for a terror attack that a couple of people did, and then there is no apologies or reparations for genocides and for slavery, et cetera, is something that I kind of find reprehensible.
So these are the people that Zohran Mamdani and the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, they're working to get elected to Congress. These are the folks with this worldview, with this philosophy. And that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section in regards to all these socialists getting elected, or not elected, but winning their primaries. And also please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And I'll see you in the next one.